The Phillies are officially back on the board, bringing in an outfield bat with Max Kepler coming to Philadelphia. Me and Luke Arcaini are here to break down who exactly this guy is and what he can bring to this Phillies team, as finally they are back on the marketplace and making some moves happen. So, Luke, we did get this news from Jeff Passan here saying outfielder Max Kepler and the Philadelphia Phillies are in agreement on a one-year, $10 million contract. Sources tell ESPN the deal, which is pending a physical, will give the Phillies a new corner outfield in the 31-year-old Kepler. First on the scene was Todd Zaleski. So acknowledge that. Todd Zaleski having the first report here. So, Luke, I'll throw this to you right off the bat here. Your initial impressions of this move are what?
Yeah, it's kind of an up and down one for
Okay.
me here. I'll tell you this, I like the player. I like I like Max Kepler's game. I always kind of have. I actually liked him in Minnesota the last few years. His 2023 was definitely his year to kind of get his money from. Last year he dealt with a little bit of an injury here and there. He wasn't great last year, just like a 682 OPS last season. Um, but the Phillies are doing another thing, sort of like the Jordan Romano trade, where they're kind of taking a chance here.
Yeah.
And if this chance works out, I think it's a really, really good move because the dude has pop. I mean, he hit 36 homers in 2019. He hit 24 in 2023. Obviously, that 19 season was probably his best. Obviously, that is now like 6 years in the past.
Right.
But there is some definite bit of upside here on Kepler. I like the pop once again. I am a bit concerned. He doesn't he hasn't hit great in his career against left-handed pitching.
Yeah.
So it kind of confuses me a bit to their plan. Because if they're signing him to play left field, which then I get to the point of where he's actually never played an inning of left field in his entire MLB career. He's only really played right field.
And center,
Um,
right?
so so yeah, a little bit of center. But what stood out to me at first was that they are now pretty close to this third luxury tax,
Okay.
which once again kind of pushes the Jeff Hoffman thing. They're gonna have to get cute with this one now. They're gonna have to figure something out. But what's also sitting in the back of my head is if they want to stay under this tax and they want to bring Hoffman back, I think this is a bit of a weird trade for Nick Castellanos.
Oh,
It's been a name that's been shopped around obviously a lot this offseason. I'm not necessarily saying that this is sort of leading to a Castellanos trade, but it is a bit confusing to me. I like the player, but right now the fit is just a little bit weird to me.
yeah, that's interesting. I did not expect you to take the direction with Castellanos there, so caught me off guard with that one. I am curious what the full plan is here, and I think that's been sort of a message of ours from the start here, is not quite figuring this out. You mentioned the tax here. It's personally frustrating to me, and maybe you have some more insight and help me understanding this here. It feels like the Phillies are in a unique position to where their owner does not care about the money side of things. And I get that's a bit of an exaggeration. Obviously, money still matters to an extent here, and you got to be smart with your assets. But why are they buying out of the bargain bin is kind of what I perceive this to be with a guy like Romano, who you're benching on him or banking on him returning to form. And same here with Kepler, that this is a guy who you've seen the peaks of what he can be, but that's not the player that we saw just last year. So I guess, do you think this is them being monetarily conscious and trying to, get the most bang for their buck, or is this them just striking out on the bigger names? And how does the tax come into play there?
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing with the tax right now is that I think they're willing to spend this money, but they don't really want to go over that third one. There's a heavy percentage that they would get taxed on. I believe it's like 50%.
Jeez.
So it is a steep price once you cross that third tax line. But what's interesting about sort of these moves so far is they're playing this a bit risky.
Yeah.
It's been two risky signings, but it's been two signings that I feel like, and I said this about Romano. It feels to me like it's almost like they know something that we don't. Once again, I don't think they would have signed Romano if he wasn't fully healthy and ready to go. So maybe they're seeing something here with Kepler. But I will say this. I think it's an interesting move. I don't necessarily 100% get the fit right now, but I do want to also remind people that just because, you're not, and everybody is allowed to have their take. Obviously, this is what we're doing, sitting on here. It's like right now having a take.
Right.
But everyone's allowed to have their take. But at the same time, just because you're not 100% familiar with somebody's game, it doesn't mean that it's a bad signing.
Sure.
Just because you don't know this guy and you don't study this guy and you don't watch him every night doesn't mean that it's a bad signing. This to me has kind of been another night of a lot of Phillies fans going blah blah blah. This isn't a big name. Blah 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 blah. And I get that. I get Phillies fans want a big bat left fielder. They want a guy that's going to crush home runs and that's going to hit for average. But not every move can be a Juan Soto type of move.
Sure.
This is something to me last year, and it's not really the best comparison at all. But this kind of seems to me like the Whit Merrifield thing, and I'm not saying he's going to turn out like Whit Merrifield.
Hope not.
But it's a guy they're kind of taking a chance on some pretty successful years. And I think right now it really does scream to me like something else is coming.
Okay.
Because I just, once again, I don't completely understand the fit, but I do, once again, I like the player that Kepler is. I like the bat. I like that they got another lefty. So if they see something here or if they have a plan, I'm all for it. But right now, as this team is constructed, it's a bit of a confusing fit.
Yeah, totally there. And I totally hear your point. I can't sit up here and pretend that I can speak on every single baseball player in the major leagues right now. But what I will say to push back on that a little bit, Luke, is it did feel like this summer or this winter here, this offseason, the Phillies approached it as we're changing our team. We're making some significant changes. And they really haven't to this point. That it's like if your girlfriend goes to you and says, I'm taking you out for a steak dinner, and then pulls into McDonald's on the way and says, this is what we're getting, I'm not gonna be the happiest man about it. I want my steak this offseason, Luke. I want the bigger moves to be happening, and we have not seen any of that. So I do think that's where kind of the frustration comes from, is my expectation of this offseason certainly is not what we're seeing in front of us. So it's interesting to me you bring up Cassie again, and I did want to kind of bring up Passan's tweet again. I always read into these things a little bit. This specific last line that says, we'll give the Phillies a new corner outfielder in the 31-year-old Kepler, I do think that's notable there. I use a Sixers comparison for the same time. When they signed Kelly Oubre, when it said starting shooting guard, that means something there. That's kind of what's promised here. So with Kepler, how do you sort of see this going? We see the depth chart. We see that we have, obviously, Nick Castellanos. Brandon Marsh is the guy who's my brain immediately connected to with this. And Marsh, we kind of know the story with him. He is a guy who has some pretty ugly hitting splits as well. Do you think this is sort of a situation where there's going to be a rotation in the outfield? Or if the roster is as currently presented, where does Kepler fit into this full mix?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, based on the contract, he's going to play a good amount of games. I mean, he's going to be out there. For Marsh, I would say to me, this kind of screams more time in center field. But it just, once again, it feels like something else will happen. I don't know, because if their plan is throwing Max Kepler in left field for the first time ever and hoping he has a bounce back season, that's an interesting plan. It could work. It could work out great, or he could be DFA'd by July.
Yeah.
So like there is definitely risk here. It's just obviously this team has a plan. And I get you don't always want, and I know that everybody wants this sort of big steak dinner, like you said. But while all these reports have come out how the Phillies want to shake things up, I think we have to remember that one, they're also reports. Two, like
Takes two to tango.
this was also one of the best teams in baseball last
Yeah.
year. Like I get they didn't do the job in the end, and they crumbled versus the Mets, and the back half of their regular season wasn't great, but like they're still probably the third best team in the National League. And I know everyone's going to hate me for saying that because they didn't sign Juan Soto and they didn't sign this person and this person and this person. They're still like really good.
Sure.
Like they're really good on paper. And just because the owner and the president of baseball operations doesn't sign everybody that you have on your wish list doesn't mean that they're still not a really good baseball team.
Yeah, no, you're spot on about that. And the last part that I'll add is it does take two to tango. You can't sign guys that don't want to come here or you're not on the same terms, and you can't trade Alec Boehm for whoever you want. It takes a team willing to take him back and give what you want in return here. So I get that there are some intricacies to things here, but
The
ultimately,
funny
go ahead.
part too about Philly is like Philly fans think that Dave Dombrowski is just on like he's just on like a video game. Like he's doing trades on like MLB The Show, and it's
Feels like
like
he's trying to, man.
it's basically like they think that he's sitting there hoping that the computer will accept this trade, and it sort of has felt like that at times.
Yeah.
But no, I don't want to be that guy that comes on here and says everything's okay. But this team has a plan. I don't know the plan. I really wish I did. That would be really cool. But I would be shocked if this is the last move as far as the outfield.
Okay, well, love to hear that, and do hope you are right about it. For the time being, we will welcome Max Kepler to Philadelphia here. Hopefully, this is a little bit redemption arc, and we're speaking at the end of the season about what a value contract he was handed, him and Jordan Romano there. But obviously, much more to go down this offseason. Me and Luke are going to be breaking things down as they come in here, so appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. As always, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like if you have not already. Any comments that you have below, we'll be back talking to you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.